difficult days we're living in right now, and so many of us having to stay inside. There aren't actual sports that are live to watch right now, but it does have us thinking. There's YouTube. There's still the internet.
It's true.
And so there's opportunities to relive some of the best moments. In fact, ESPNU was playing some of the 2006 Big East tournament, and I know one of the examples you're going to bring up here in a minute. So my pick for you to watch on your computer, your phone, stream it to your TV for an SU Classic, Syracuse football 1998 against Virginia Tech. I was at this game. I was 13. Virginia Tech was up 21-6 at halftime. Syracuse storms back. They're still down 26-22 in the last possession. Donovan McNabb.
Oh, unbelievable.
And there's so many facets. If you don't want to watch the whole game, if you have time, like so many do, go for it. But if you don't have as much time, just watch the fourth quarter, really the last possession. They're down by 4 points. Virginia Tech forces them into a 4th and 10. And put this in perspective on that 4th and 10. It wasn't a scramble, they called a quarterback draw. And they got the first down. McNabb runs about 40 or 50 yards. And the only reason he goes down is he runs into his own receiver who's blocking for him. And then, of course, you get down into the red zone. Syracuse looks like they're dead to rights. And before that, they have to call their last time out because McNabb's throwing up. Mm-hmm. So there's that aspect of it, which would come back in the Super Bowl 6 years later. Yeah. And then they get second life on their drive because Virginia Tech gets called for a late hit, unnecessarily hit McNabb. And then, of course, the last play of the game, the old tight end throwback, which you'd always see Boston College do it with Steve Adazio because he was on this coaching staff. McNabb rolls all the way to the right, throws crossbody over to his shoulder. It's the tight end Stephen Berminski going against 2 Virginia Tech defensive backs. Berminski hauls it in. Pandemonium. Amazing moment. And that'll make you feel good in these moments. There's a lot more. We'll probably bring you more of these depending on how long this hiatus of sports goes. But that's my pick to give you some good feels for Syracuse sports.
Well, you think about some of the high school kids we cover right now. They weren't even alive to see Donovan McNabb play at Syracuse, and what a treat that was. I know I was only about 10 years old, but I remember those times, and it was a special time to be a Syracuse football fan. And I mean, he really changed the program modern day anyway. I mean, we know obviously Jim Brown and the likes of number 44 really changed the program. But that was the guy who got it rolling, in the 90s. And then, for what a lot of people these days anyway refer to Syracuse football, they think of Donovan McNabb.
Absolutely. So your pick, though.
Okay, so my pick, this one's probably pretty obvious. The 6 overtime game against UConn at Madison Square Garden. I know you were there for that game.
Sure.
I was at a buddy's house watching it at his apartment on black and white TV because he didn't have Spectrum yet. So he had just moved in, and it was fun. I mean, it was, the volume on the TV wasn't working that well. It was kind of like watching it without any announcers in black and white, and sometimes it would blur out a little bit, but then you could tell what was happening. But what a game that was. I mean, you think of so many different layers of Eric Devendorf thinking he had the game-winning shot, jumping up on the table there and signifying victory, but then having to go back and play again. And Johnny Flynn and Paul Harris, I mean, these guys were giving 110%. They were exhausted by the time that game ended. And something I'll always remember is on ESPN after that game, they were showing the SportsCenter highlights, and I believe Steve Levy, it was either Steve Levy or Stuart Scott was doing the highlights, and they showed the time, like when the game ended, it was like 1:30 in the morning. People were leaving the arena.
I know.
You remember, that was just one of those moments that made you say, like, wow, I was a Syracuse basketball fan watching that game, and that was one of those special moments we'll remember forever.
These are moments we'll never forget, like you just said, and pretty soon we'll have games to root for again.
Yeah.
I promise you that. But for now, it is fun to relive these moments. You mentioned I was there. I was courtside when Devendorf hit that shot, and there was the review. I was sitting next to one of your good friends, Bob Huggins, the West Virginia basketball
absolutely.
coach. He said a word I can't say. It was an expletive, as you're not shocked by.
Yep.
But I just remember singing. It was just random because he was there scouting because West Virginia had won earlier, and Syracuse beat West Virginia in overtime the next night. Mm-hmm. And that was just one of those moments, that was early in my career. I was on the job less than 2 years. Mm-hmm. Like, wow, I'm sitting next to Bob Huggins watching this. And then as time went on, I remember walking in the back tunnel with Paul Harris on the way to the post-game availability. He had 27 rebounds. Wow. I'm like, Paul, I think that's a Big East record. Even in that moment, he's like, well, it's just 6 overtime. It's not going to count. I'm like, Paul, enjoy it. And then he's like, yeah, okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it was just one of those, this the faces, the walk-on Justin Thomas getting in the game, who was the nephew of our anchor here on NBC3 at the time, Jackie Robinson. Wow. And there was just all these layers and things that were coming out. I actually had caught a form of bronchitis.
Ooh.
It was in the winter, and I had to get sent home the next day because I could hardly, between that and the excitement of the game, could hardly talk.
Oh,
And they knew they were gonna be on a tournament run. And they went to the Sweet 16, so I had to come back to town.
Yeah.
But I was there for the one that mattered.
Oh, man,
and
that's amazing, man.
I'll never forget that. Feel free to let us know your suggestions. We'll be sharing this on social media, and let us know the YouTube clip that makes you feel good and get you through these tough times when it comes to Syracuse and Central New York sports.